Well, welcome. I'm Bart Poulson, and this is LinkedIn Live Office Hours, streaming on both Facebook and YouTube, in addition to LinkedIn. And I'm the founder of datalab.cc. I create courses for LinkedIn and for Datalab on statistics and data science, and really working with applied data in small businesses, nonprofits, and academic settings. And what I want to talk to you about today is Autodidact Swagger. But before I get started on that, I would love it if you're online, if you're in the chat, if you could just say hello and tell me where you're coming in from. That'll give me a little bit of idea. I see we have Desiree. Thank you. Good morning, Desiree. I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah, and so it's 10 a.m. for me. I know people tend to watch this from a lot of different places, and also the recording will be available to you on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook afterwards. And I think a lot of people will be able to access it there. Luis, hello from Mexico, and hello from Raleigh, North Carolina, Rochester, from Sweden. It is later in the day if you are in Sweden. Well, I'm very flattered that you all would join me. Thanks for coming. Um, I well, oh my goodness, India, which means it is the middle of the night for you, and France. Oh, this is fabulous. It's a great international crowd. And Leeds, 5 p.m. Yep, lots people from all over. Oh my goodness, this is fabulous. I'm just watching people come in. We're seeing Desiree and Luis in Mexico, and LinkedIn user in Raleigh, Denise in Rochester, Seda in Sweden, Harshvardhan in India, Guillaume in France, Thomas in Leeds, Charlie in Durham, Vivian in Ghana, Rogers in Kenya, Desiree in Utah, Thais in Brazil. Oops, I missed one. There's Opiyemi in Manchester. Oh, Harshvardhan. Yeah, okay. It's only 9:32 in India. That's right, because I'm doing this one earlier. I did one a week or two ago at 5 p.m. and we did have people logging in from India, but it was 2 a.m. for them. About Nisha, good morning. Thank you so much for coming. Um, Miguel from San Diego, Nisha in India. This is wonderful. Thank you for coming. I'm here to talk about learning to work with data and really about learning in general in your life. And let me begin by just explaining the term autodidact swagger. Now, this came from, I encountered the term in a conversation at a conference several years ago. I was in Los Angeles at UCLA for a conference on the creative coding language called processing. And just in between sessions, talking with another person there, we were talking about one of the things that really helped us in our careers was that we both were able to learn things on our own. And he just kind of dropped the term autodidact swagger. And I have to admit, I don't know if he made it up at that point, but it has stuck with me ever since then. So autodidact is from a Greek term autodidactos, which means self-taught, and swagger can mean a lot of things. Now it has a special meaning in the hip hop world, but it also just means somebody who has confidence that you can handle what's in front of you. And so I like to think that what autodidact swagger is the confidence you get from being able to learn and master new things as needed. And one of the reasons that's important is because we're always encountering new situations. We're always finding new things that we haven't confronted before. And Now, I should mention, I'm also a very big fan of organized formal learning. I'm a professor. I teach at Utah Valley University. I have a PhD and two master's degree and a bachelor's degree. My PhD is in social psychology. It's a research field. And that actually, before I even finished getting my PhD, I started teaching statistics courses. And that is what led to my own interest um, in being able to learn things on your own. And yeah, I sometimes explain to people there's a funny thing about just thinking about my own life. I'm going to ask you about yours in a minute, but in my own life, yeah, I was in college for 12 years straight, and I got my 4 degrees, and I've been employed in college ever since then. So I'm a big fan of formal education. But the funny thing is, the stuff that I get paid for, both the course that I teach at Utah Valley University and the work that I do for LinkedIn and the work that I do for Data Lab, I'm self-taught in that. I took one undergraduate statistics course. I paid no attention. I didn't learn anything. I took a year-long graduate sequence in statistics as part of my social psych PhD program. All I remember is that the teacher, Gary Winkle, said that the alpha value of O5 was the fuzzy little alpha value that we cuddled up with. And we were working on SAS on a mainframe computer. So we would type it in the terminals up on our floor, and then we'd have to run down 2 floors to get the giant blue and white printout, and then learn that we made a mistake and then have to go back up and do it some more. Makes it sound like I grew up in the 50s. This was in the 90s. But the things that I get paid for, I am self-taught. And now I do believe, by the way, that my training as a social psychologist and my experience being peripheral to the psychology field, social psychology is a research field, it's not a clinical field. I studied conflict and how people think about people. I'm not a therapist, but I think that that was always really important to how I approached um, my data work. It makes a difference. I also want to point out that the person I heard the term autodidact swagger from was also had a PhD in, I want to say, biology, and he was also a teacher. So we're both fans of the formal education, and but the ability to learn new things is important because, as I mentioned, you're always learning new things. You're always confronting new tasks, and there's a truism that the vast majority of the things that people need to do their daily jobs are things that they learn on the job. You may have this background, but you're going to be learning things online or in real time as you're doing your job. And so, one of the things that I would love to know from at least a few of you is, what are some of the things that you have learned on your own? And also, how do you feel that that related to some of your formal training? Did you get formal instruction in this? Were there things that you were formally taught in that were very useful to you? But what sorts of things have you had to learn either from scratch, or you've had to take other things and adapt in your own work? And if you could put a comment in about that, I would love to hear from you. Again, what sorts of things have you had to learn how to do, either as an entirely new skill or taking something that you knew before but having to adapt it in a meaningful way to your work? And if you could talk about some of those in the comments, put those in the comments. I can share them on the screen and we can talk a little bit more about some of your own experiences. So there's a bunch of you here. If you have some of those experiences, it would be great to hear from you. And I think I can put that as a banner. What have you learned on your own? And sometimes it could be things like it might be how to use a particular computer, it might be how to use a particular program or do a special procedure in it. It might even be just about how to present your results and how to structure things when you're talking with people who want you to do data projects for them. Any one of those. Um, so let's come down to, we have one here from Desiree. She says she was recently a pre-K teacher and had to learn how to lesson plan on my own. It's hard to get that amount of structure. One of the interesting things is, when you're a teacher, you have a lot of information that you want to share with other people. And I know that my experience as a college teacher is going to be different from a pre-K, but you have information you want to share with people. There's things that you want to communicate with them, but the structure is going to make an enormous difference. And so having to create lesson plans on your own is a special skill. The nice thing is you can figure out some of it on your own. You can also Google it. You can watch YouTube videos, and that's going to be helpful for you. Um, Denise says that learning sessions, successful live virtual. I just want to mention this is only my second LinkedIn Live, and I am still learning how to do things. I'm going to be learning a lot more, but it turns out that kind of communication is going to be important. Oh, Denise, you have a follow up. Conducting successful live virtual learning sessions. It's a special skill. I used to teach entirely in person, and gradually, meaning at the university, gradually more and more of my teaching went online, starting about 10 years ago. And then when the pandemic hit, I was entirely online. Fortunately, I was well suited because I was 90% online before that. All it meant is I told people, well, we won't be meeting in class the one week, but you already have everything online. But the virtual learning sessions are a special challenge. Oh, this is an interesting one. We have a user saying that they've had to learn mathematical relationships. You know what? I would love it if you could follow up on that one a little bit more. And well, we can take a closer look at it. Vitor talks about learning programming. I learned programming on my own, and I learned it through this creative programming called processing. It's for making pictures. Although I learned how to do a lot of other things from it. And what's funny about that is that made it so I was eventually able to then approach the statistical programming language R in a more informed way. I had avoided it up till then. I'd always used like SPSS and Excel, but the experience I got with R, the experience I got with processing made a language like R more accessible to me. And I learned it from a book called Getting Started with Processing. We have another person taught themselves Labview to support radar testing to incorporate radar stream data with yaw, roll, and pitch sensor data streams. Yeah, I could see why that is something that maybe you weren't prepared for ahead of time. It turns out that different fields have different demands for data. I'm trained as an experimental psychologist, and so we tend to do randomized experiments, very simple stuff, like we give people one kind of a survey or a different kind of a survey, and we've got a small number of survey questions on there, and then we're comparing two groups, which usually means we're either doing a t-test or an analysis of variance. And I'm accustomed to doing data that way. It took me a while to learn that if you're in medical research or if you're in finance, you do entirely different models. Medical research, you can do a lot of regression models. Finance, you're doing time series models. And I had to, very quickly learn how to work with each of those for some of the stuff that I do with LinkedIn. So I love this one in terms of very specific technical skills are going to be central to your job, but something that I'm not at all surprised you wouldn't have gotten specific training for. Thomas has a longer one. Fortunately, it shows up well here. I was formerly a chemist, having a combined master's degree in chemistry and a combined master's PhD in chemical engineering and particle engineering. I've come into data science almost by accident, got a job at a school after finishing my thesis working with data, then hooked me, and I'm now getting formal training in data science and helping flesh out my company's data capabilities. Do you know what? That's consistent with what a huge number of people in data science are. It's only in the last, 10 years, maybe even really only the last 5 years, that specific degrees and certificates have been available in data science. Previous to that, everybody was trained in something else. And interestingly, physics was a common one. because often used to dealing with very large data sets. Um, and so if you're working in data science, chances are you came from another field. Um, and then Guillaume says, like you as a teacher, I have learned many topics on my own, like database language and methodology to make future digital marketing understand how some technology works. You're ahead of me. I still don't work with databases, but I know that in a lot of situations, that is how the organization works. And so you're doing a great job of adapting yourself. Georgia has learned foreign languages and coaching people in Excel, and good job on getting the languages. I thought I knew French from my high school classes until I went and lived in France for 2 years. It was a baptism by fire. I eventually got pretty good. And then we have percentages and relationships between numerator and denominator. Got it. Okay, so this is the follow-up on the mathematical relationships. You know what? It's really helpful. And this is one of those things where you can read about it or you can even watch videos, but it's not until you're doing it, until you're struggling and hitting the wall that you get a different thing. And let me ask a different question. I'd love to hear from some of you. How did you learn these new things? How much of it was you read a book, if you actually had a paper physical book, or you Googled it, or you went on YouTube, or you went to something like LinkedIn Learning or Udemy or Facebook or someplace else? Where did you learn those technical skills? And how did you get it reinforced in your own behavior? Actually, chances are all of you have been on Stack Overflow more than a few times. But I would love to know where you specifically learned some of these things. Uh, while you're getting those together, Thomas followed up. I was fairly good organic chemist, but my math statistics was rubbish. Data processing in the school formalized how handy I got with Excel. It's one of those on the job skills, and my research skills made me knowledge thirsty. I love that. Data science and analysis slakes that thirst, which is why I found myself learning SQL, AppScript, and now Python. Thomas, you're putting together an amazing tech stack for being able to tackle new data problems. I have this much experience with SQL, never dealt with AppScript. I have some Python. Mostly I use R or SPSS or Jamovi or Excel. But you also see how you start learning something, you encounter a problem that you didn't have the right tools, and you can start building on top of that. So I would love to hear from some of you about where did you go to specifically learn the new thing? So let's put that one there. Where did you go? Again, did you I learned how to do processing from an actual physical paper book, small skinny book, getting started with processing, and that was about 10 or 12 years ago. Um, it's a Java-based language. It's sort of a simplified version of Java, and so it made a lot of other work very simple for me. I also remember, sometimes you ask other people to help you, but I remember I once took my travel allowance from my university job and I hired a graduate student from another university to teach me R, and it was an enormously frustrating experience. They left out this one critical piece of information, which is that you could save scripts and run scripts in R. They had me writing all of my code in Microsoft Word and then copying and pasting the commands one at a time into the console, which was probably the least efficient and most frustrating way possible to do the work. So it's not surprising I left R for a few years before I came back and learned I could do scripts. And part of that was by getting books and also by seeing complete scripts that people would put on Stack Overflow. It's someplace that I ended up a lot of the time. So a few of you have responded. Oh, I love this one. Change formulas repeatedly. You know what? There is a lot of trial and error. I was helping my daughter with a project the other day that involved she's taking an engineering class, and it involved using a virtual version of the Arduino microprocessor and setting up a little breadboard with an LED and some buttons, and you're trying to light it. And I have worked with physical Arduinos 10 years ago, but I had no recollection how to set up a serial set of buttons. And so we together spent about 5 or 10 minutes sort of just like random hacking and slashing, which is easy to do when you're using a digital version. Although I eventually did read the instructions and I was able to generalize from what was on there. It told you how to do something else, but I was able to generalize it. But yeah, that's why they call it hacking. It's because you are doing the bits and pieces going around. Guillaume said paper books. I've got, oh my goodness, I've got so many books right here, right next to me. I'm in my office, and YouTube is a great source, and I'm very flattered that you saw one of my lessons on LinkedIn, Guillaume. So thank you for that. This person says, if associated with the company back in the day, many companies would send you software and resources. Labview sent me CDs with the software and learning resources. You know what? I remember when I was doing my analyses for my PhD, I actually used a program called Data Desk. And I use it on my tiny little black and white 8-inch Mac Classic. And I read the manuals all the way through, starting on page 1. I remember when I had a summer job where I was working with Excel, they actually still had a paper manual. I read the entire manual starting on page 1. Can't really do that anymore. There's not so many paper manuals, but those are some good resources. Iris says, LinkedIn Learning. Again, I work with LinkedIn Learning. I go there to learn how to do stuff. YouTube, Stack Overflow, and a master's program at CSU Global. So you have both the self-directed and the formal education. Vitor, I need a goal to reach and the right motivation. You know, it makes a huge difference. Learning in the abstract is difficult. And I know that's one of the things about formal education at the college and university is often you're learning stuff in a very abstract sense, but being able to put it on something makes a big difference. So you start the research, asking people close to me, books and internet, and ultimate Chat GPT. Yeah, I love Chat GPT. I also find sometimes it's super helpful. I had to do some scripting for Google Sheets. It was fabulous. I asked it to help me produce a graph in R, and it was just a disaster. But yeah, I've got a paid Chat GPT subscription. I love it. And let's see here. We've got Thomas says Stack Overflow, Chat GPT has been invaluable. Yep. Once you got the basics. And then I came to this LinkedIn session from a course on data science. Oh, which was referred to you by an apprenticeship program. I'm very glad to hear that. It's nice. It's comforting to me to know that the stuff that I learned can be useful to people and it gets shared out. And then micro professors. Yeah, the push pop, man, I remember that. Another person, meetups. Using Candlestick Charts for investing. Candlestick Charts are a specific kind of data visualization, a graph that's used for finance. And Excel can make them if you provide the data in the right format. But in terms of reading them and interpreting them, because interpreting and applying is always going to be the big challenge. And so I'm a member of a few meetup groups, and I know they were more popular. Let me rephrase that. I know I went more often in person before the pandemic, and I've been doing online things with some of them since then. But meetups are a great way, especially because there are specific people who are in your community and you can ask them questions. The banker box. Oh, yeah, I got stuff there. Let me mention one thing, because to talk about doing things in practice makes a big difference. So I teach my university course, and in that, I'm going to just turn off this banner. So in my university course, which is Psychology 3110, Statistics for the Behavioral Sciences, it's the first and only statistics class that students in behavioral sciences at my school take. And that's psychology, sociology, anthropology, social work, family science. and also students from criminology and exercise science and stuff like that. But because of the way the course is structured, it is more abstract than I would like. And consequently, there have been a few different times that I have run an event that we call a data charrette. In fact, let me just put that in here. And so data charrette. Charette is actually French for a small cart, but it's also used to refer to creative activity under extreme pressure. And it's also used in, interestingly, that term is frequently used in city planning. But the data charrette is, think of it like a data hackathon. And what this was, now we did this 3 times back in 2015 to 2017, but it's something that we're going to be starting on doing twice a year, starting this fall at my university. I'm going to try to package it so people can do it in other places. Theoretically, when I get it all together, you could run a data charrette where you are. It's the process is simple, at least in theory. What we would do is we would find some local organizations. We would work with nonprofits, but you could work with anybody who has data. They have a specific question that they would like answered from the data, but they don't know how to do it. And the specific question is important. And then we would give the data to a group of volunteers. And in the previous versions of this, they would spend 2 days working on the data. We did it as a Friday, Saturday. But the rule of thumb, by the way, is any data science project, 80% of your time is spent preparing the data. And so what we're going to do from this point on is we're going to get a smaller set of volunteers to actually do the data prep ahead of time. So we can give people cleaned data sets, and we can give them templates for the scripting. We can give them templates for the presentations. But what people would do is they would take the data, and over the course of about, 15 hours, they would clean the data, do an analysis, and get an actionable insight for the organization. So they say, you had this question about whether you should be open on Sundays. You had this question about whether you would be able to find new donors through this avenue or this avenue. And we would take these specific operational questions, meaning this is something they need to know in order to do their business effectively. And we'd give them an answer at the end of the second day. And I can tell you that there were times that people were in tears because well, maybe not right then, but like a week later, one of the nonprofits said they got their biggest donation ever. It was a tiny, small profit, so it still was a pretty small donation, but they got their biggest donation ever as a result of the analysis that we gave them. By the way, and that analysis was just pivot tables in a spreadsheet. It was very simple data, but they didn't know how to do that. And the thing about it is, when I invite people to the data charrettes, you don't have to be an expert. Yeah, we need people with technical skills, but even more, we need people who know whether a question makes sense, whether an answer is something that would be usable. And I am completely reconstructing my statistics course secretly as a way to prepare people to participate in the data charrettes. That kind of hands-on experience with real data, those of you who work with real data that came out from the wild, for instance, like dates are totally mucked up, that things are in the wrong place, things are measured different ways, and that's why the data prep takes so long. But it's those skills. Those are the things that you learn. That's the autodidact part that gets into what you've been doing. Now, my time is up in just a second. Here's what I want to do. I want to thank you for coming here. Thank you for sharing some of your own experiences. And I think what we have here is a group of people who everybody has had to have some experience of building on some of their formal training, but having the tenacity and the creativity to go and learn new things that you need. Sometimes just a little adjustment on what you have, and sometimes very specific, entirely new skills. And you've given some great examples of that. I love, sharing the range of ways that you've learned that. And also take a look at datacharette.org. That will redirect you to my website, datalab.cc. And stay posted as the data charrettes get ready. I will share information about how you could take that same structure and do something similar to it where you are. It's a great experience. And with that, I'm going to say thank you so much for joining me today. I'll be having another LinkedIn Live in 4 weeks at this time, but in 2 weeks, I'm doing one on Tuesday in the evening for me at a time that would work better for people who, say, for instance, are in India, Africa, and the Middle East. So you don't have to be up quite so late. I'll be up late instead. But thank you so much for coming. And the video will be available in a few days on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And I look forward to seeing you again. Bye-bye.